The sun-scorched town of Rattlesnake Junction held its share of secrets, but none quite like Sarah Hawkins. Some folks say the deadliest predators are the ones that blend into their surroundings, and Sarah was about to prove just how right they were. This is the story of how the most notorious gang in the territory made the fatal mistake of threatening a woman whose gentle smile masked a past written in gunsmoke and glory. But before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's story might just be our best one yet. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Rattlesnake Junction shimmered like a mirage in the merciless Arizona heat, its weathered buildings casting long shadows across the dusty main street. Most folks had enough sense to stay indoors during these scorching afternoon hours, but Sarah Hawkins sat motionless on the worn bench outside Madame Chen's tea house, her untouched cup of jasmine growing cold in the desert wind. Unlike the cowhands and miners who frequented the town's rougher establishments, Sarah preferred the quiet dignity of Madame Chen's place. The old Chinese woman had come to accept Sarah's peculiar ways over the past 3 months. How she always sat with her back to the wall, how her eyes constantly scanned the street despite appearing lost in thought, and how her right hand never strayed far from the simple black shawl that concealed what hung beneath. Madame Chen's other patrons found Sarah's presence unsettling, though none could say exactly why. Perhaps it was the way she moved, each gesture precise and measured like a dance step practiced 1,000 times. Or maybe it was her eyes, green as summer sage, but carrying winters within them that no one cared to count. Sheriff Marcus Reed had raised eyebrows when he pinned a deputy's star on a woman 2 months back, but none could deny the peace that had settled over the town since her arrival. The usual troublemaker seemed to lose their nerve whenever her shadow darkened their path, though she'd never so much as raised her voice, let alone drawn the weapon everyone suspected she carried. The whispers about her past traveled through town like tumbleweeds, each telling different but equally impossible tales. Some claimed she'd ridden with famous outlaws. Others swore she'd been a performer in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. A few old-timers muttered about a legendary gunfighter who disappeared years ago after the Mason County War, but Sarah never confirmed nor denied any of the stories. The afternoon's quiet shattered as 3 riders thundered into town, their horses' hooves kicking up clouds of red dust. They wore the crimson bandanas of the Red River Raiders, a gang that had been pushing further into the territory with increasing boldness. Their leader, a brute known as Coyote Jack Wilson, had been testing Sheriff Reed's patience lately, each raid growing more daring than the last. The riders dismounted outside the Golden Nugget Saloon, just across from where Sarah sat. Their swagger spoke of too much whiskey, and the kind of meanness that often led to bloodshed. The tallest of the 3, a man with a face scarred by smallpox, spat tobacco juice into the dust, and eyed Sarah with unconcealed contempt. The deputy's badge pinned to her simple black dress seemed to personally offend him. Madame Chen appeared in her doorway, her aged face creased with concern. "Miss Sarah," she spoke softly in her accented English, "perhaps today would be a good day to take tea inside?" The old woman's hands nervously worked at the jade pendant hanging from her neck, a gift she claimed had been blessed by monks in her homeland. Before Sarah could respond, a woman's scream pierced the air from within the Golden Nugget. The sound carried notes of genuine terror that set Sarah's jaw tight. She rose with fluid grace, each movement deliberate as a cat stalking its prey. "Please stay inside, Madame Chen," she said, her voice carrying an authority that belied its softness. The ancient shopkeeper touched Sarah's arm, an unusual familiarity from the normally reserved woman. "There are stories," she whispered, her dark eyes intense, "about a woman gunfighter from years past. They called her Ghost Hand Hannah, said she could draw and fire before a man's fingers even twitched." She studied Sarah's face intently. She disappeared after the Mason County War. Some say she killed 30 men in a single afternoon. A flicker of something crossed Sarah's features. Recognition, perhaps, or resignation. But before she could respond, more shouts erupted from the saloon, followed by the sound of breaking glass and a man's cruel laughter. Sarah gently removed Madame Chen's hand and stepped into the street, the desert wind tugging at her dark hair. Time to earn that star, lady, one of the townsfolk called out mockingly from a safe distance. But Sarah didn't seem to hear. Her focus had narrowed to the saloon's swinging doors, behind which trouble waited with red bandanas and loaded guns. Some said later that they saw her lips move slightly, as if tasting forgotten words, before she crossed the street with the same measured grace she always carried. What happened next would change Rattlesnake Junction forever, though none who witnessed it could agree on exactly how it all unfolded. But everyone remembered the strange calm in Sarah's eyes as she pushed through those saloon doors, like a woman walking into her own home rather than what waited beyond. The afternoon sun hung suspended in the sky, as if even nature held its breath to see what would happen when the quiet deputy faced down the Red River raiders. The Golden Nugget's interior fell silent as Sarah stepped through the doors, dust motes dancing in the shafts of afternoon light that pierced the smoky air. The saloon's usual crowd had pressed themselves against the walls, leaving a clear view of the three raiders who'd cornered Lucy Peterson, the new schoolteacher, against the bar. The room reeked of spilled whiskey and fear, the floorboards still wet from overturned bottles. The smallest of the raiders, a wiry man with a knife scar across his throat that turned his voice into a perpetual whisper, held Lucy's wrist in a cruel grip. His reputation preceded him. Silent, Pete Morgan, known for cutting out men's tongues before killing them. Behind the bar, Thomas McBride, the owner, lay unconscious, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead where a bottle had struck him. Empty glasses and broken furniture littered the floor, evidence of the raiders' destructive entrance. "Well, ain't this something special?" Silent Pete rasped, his damaged voice sending chills through the onlookers. "Sheriff Reed's got himself a lady deputy. What's next? Gonna hire them Chinese to guard the bank?" His companions laughed, but their eyes betrayed a hint of uncertainty as they studied Sarah's calm demeanor. Even hardened killers recognized something in her stance that gave them pause. Sarah's gaze swept the room, noting positions, angles, distances, habits drilled into her long ago in places she tried to forget. The piano player had frozen mid-note, his hands hovering above the keys. Three cowboys hunched over their poker game, cards forgotten, while a pair of painted ladies watched from the upper balcony, their practiced smiles replaced by genuine fear. "Release Miss Peterson," she said softly, her voice carrying easily in the tense silence. "Then leave town, I won't ask twice." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy with unspoken threat. The tallest raider, the one with the smallpox scars, drew himself up to his full height. His duster coat was stained with old blood, a testament to countless acts of violence. "Name's Buck Thorne, lady. Coyote Jack's right hand. And you ain't in any position to be making demands." His hand dropped to his holster with practiced arrogance. "Unless you're fixing to draw that iron I bet you got under that shawl." Sarah remained still, her hands hanging loose at her sides. The black shawl shifted slightly in the breeze from the swinging doors, offering glimpses of well-worn leather beneath. "Miss Peterson has nothing to do with this. Let her go, Mr. Thorne. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed." Her green eyes held a weight that made even Thorne's practiced swagger falter. The third raider, younger than the others with a face that still held traces of boyhood, tightened his grip on his gun. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the relative cool of the saloon's interior. "Buck, someone ain't right about this one. The way she's standing." His voice trailed off as Sarah's gaze met his, and he took an involuntary step backward, recognition flickering in his eyes like he'd seen a ghost story come to life. Lucy Peterson's voice trembled as she spoke, her proper Eastern accent made more pronounced by fear. "Please, Sarah. They said they're going to take me to their camp. Said Coyote Jack's been wanting a schoolteacher to educate his men properly." Tears streaked her face, but her eyes held a desperate courage that spoke of her frontier spirit. "Shut it," Silent Pete growled, twisting Lucy's arm until she cried out. The sound echoed off the saloon's walls like a gunshot. "Now listen here, deputy, you're going to turn around and walk out that door. Tell Reed this town belongs to the Red River Raiders now, and if he's got any sense, he'll—" The man's words died in his throat as Sarah moved. Later, witnesses would argue about what they saw. Some swore she'd drawn and fired in the blink of an eye, her movements too fast for mortal sight to follow. Others insisted they never saw her draw at all. that the gun simply appeared in her hand as if conjured by dark magic. A few claimed they saw something impossible, a woman moving like wind through morning mist, deadly as a rattler's strike. 2 shots rang out, their thunder deafening in the confined space. The sound sent the saloon's ceiling birds scattering in panic, their wings casting chaotic shadows across the scene below. Silent Pete's gun, half drawn, clattered to the floor as he stumbled backward, his shoulder blooming red where Sarah's bullet had found its mark with surgical precision. The youngest raider dropped his weapon with a howl, his gun hand shattered by her second shot. Buckthorn managed to clear leather, but Sarah was no longer where she had been. Like smoke drifting between shadows, she appeared at his side, her movements carrying an inhuman grace that spoke of years spent dancing with death. The barrel of her Colt pressed against his temple, its metal still warm from the previous shots. "That's 2 men who'll live." Sarah's voice remained quiet, almost gentle, though it carried to every corner of the room. "The third choice is yours, Mr. Thorne, but remember, some ghosts are real and some legends don't die easy." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sheriff Marcus Reed stood in his office, studying the telegram in his weathered hands while Sarah waited quietly. The afternoon's events at the Golden Nugget had spread through Rattlesnake Junction like wildfire, growing more fantastic with each telling. Outside, the setting sun painted the town in shades of blood and gold, casting long shadows through the office's grimy windows. 2 shots, Reed muttered, running a hand through his graying hair. Clean through the shoulder and hand. No dead bodies. That's either remarkable luck or... He let the thought hang unfinished, studying Sarah with new eyes. The light caught the silver threads in his beard, testament to 20 years of frontier law enforcement. Sarah remained by the door, her position offering clear views of both the street and the office's back entrance. Old habits died hard if they died at all. "They'll be back," she said softly. "Coyote Jack won't let this stand. Men like him can't afford to show weakness." Reed nodded, setting the telegram down carefully on his desk, which was cluttered with wanted posters and sheriff's notices from across the territory. "Got word from Silver Springs. 3 stagecoach robberies in the past month, all pointing to the raiders. 2 drivers died. 1 passenger who tried playing the hero." He paused, watching her reaction. "Interesting thing is, witnesses described a woman among the gang. Tall, dark-haired, deadly with a gun. Wore a red rose in her hair when she killed." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but her fingers brushed unconsciously against her shawl. The fabric shifted, revealing glimpses of well-worn leather beneath. "Lots of women know how to handle guns out here. Territory breeds hard people. Not like this." Reed pulled out a wanted poster from his desk drawer, the paper yellowed at the edges. The sketch showed a woman with sharp features and cold eyes, a familiar-looking Colt at her hip. Her beauty was evident even in the crude drawing, but it was a deadly sort of beauty, like a rattlesnake in the sun. "Rachel Red Rose Thorne, Buckthorn's sister. Word is she's been riding with Coyote Jack's gang, making quite a name for herself. They say she can shoot the flame off a candle at 50 paces. The name hung in the air between them like gunsmoke after a firefight. Sarah studied the poster with detached interest, though her spine had stiffened imperceptibly. "You have something to ask me, Sheriff? Best speak plain. Sunset's coming, and I need to make my rounds." Reed leaned forward, his desk creaking under his weight. The last light through the window cast his face in sharp relief, highlighting old scars and deeper worries. "Most folks don't know this, but before I came to Rattlesnake Junction, I worked the Mason County Territory. Was just a deputy back then, during the war between the ranchers and the rustlers." His eyes never left Sarah's face. "Saw things there, things that haunted men's nightmares, including a woman gunfighter who moved like nothing natural." Sarah's silence spoke volumes. Outside, a dog barked at shadows, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote answered. The street was emptying as townsfolk hurried home, sensing trouble on the wind like cattle before a storm. Reed continued, his voice dropping lower. They called her Ghost Hand Hannah. Never saw her face clearly. She always wore a black shawl. But I saw her draw. Saw her put down 6 men in the time it takes to blink. They said she learned to shoot from Wild Bill himself, though some claimed she was better. Ghost stories, Sarah murmured. But there was something in her tone. Remembrance, perhaps. Or regret. The shadows in the office grew longer, deeper, like memories best left buried. Every territory has its legends, Sheriff. Most ain't worth the breath spent telling them, maybe. Reed stood slowly, years of frontier life evident in his stiff movements. An old bullet wound in his hip made him favor his right leg, though he tried to hide it. The thing is, I've been hearing rumors lately. Rumors I don't much care for. About Coyote Jack's real plans. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkening street. Man's been gathering forces, not just common bandits anymore. He's recruiting killers, professionals, building something bigger than just a gang. A flicker of genuine concern crossed Sarah's features. How many? 30 men at least, maybe more. And now with Rachel Thorne at his side? Reed turned back to face her. Word is they're planning something big. Something that'll make those stagecoach robberies look like child's play. They've been buying Winchester rifles, enough ammunition to start a small war. Sarah processed this information silently, her mind already working through implications. Her fingers traced unconscious patterns on her shawl, a habit Reed had noticed whenever she was deep in thought. He watched her carefully, noting how she unconsciously positioned herself to cover both exits, how her eyes never stopped scanning for threats, even here in his office. There's more, he said finally, pulling out another piece of paper from his desk. Got word from an old friend in the territorial marshal's office. Someone's been asking questions about Mason County, about what really happened there, about the day the killing stopped. The last rays of sunlight slipped behind the western mountains, plunging the office into shadow. A lamp flickered on Reed's desk, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Sarah's voice came from the darkness, steady as ever. What kind of questions? About a woman who disappeared after the fighting. About 30 men died in a single afternoon, each with a single shot through the heart. And about a black ledger that went missing the same day. A ledger that held enough secrets to bring down half the territory's most powerful men. Names, dates, bribes paid and received. The kind of information men kill to keep buried. Sarah moved to the window, her reflection ghost-like in the darkening glass. The street below was empty now, though lamplight spilled from the Golden Nugget where Thomas McBride was already telling tales about the afternoon's events. Ghosts don't leave tracks, Sheriff, and dead men tell no tales. No, Reed agreed, lighting a cigar that glowed like a fallen star in the darkness. But sometimes they have brothers who do. Like Thomas Crawford, territorial judge and brother to a certain marshal who died at Mason County. Man who might have owned that missing ledger. Sarah's hand moved beneath her shawl, an unconscious gesture that spoke volumes. Judge Crawford died 2 years ago. Riding accident, as I recall. His son didn't. Reed's words landed like bullets. William Crawford. Young, ambitious, connected to half the powerful families in the territory. And word is, he's been spending time with Coyote Jack's gang, providing information, funding, and political protection, building something that's starting to look an awful lot like an army. The implications hung heavy in the gathering darkness. The cigar smoke twisted in the air like forgotten spirits. Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying echoes of something older, harder. You're saying this goes beyond simple banditry. That Coyote Jack's building an army for someone with bigger plans, someone looking to settle old scores. I'm saying, Reed chose his words carefully, tapping ash from his cigar, that maybe Ghost Hand Hannah didn't disappear by accident. Maybe she took something that powerful men want back, something worth building an army to find, something worth killing for. Sarah turned from the window, her movements liquid grace in the shadows. The lamp caught her eyes, and for a moment, Reed saw what others had seen at Mason County, something deadly and beautiful, like morning frost on a tombstone. Ghosts don't have past, Sheriff. Best remember that. Everyone has a past, Deputy. Reed's voice was gentle now. The question is, when it catches up to you, will you face it alone? Sarah's evening patrol took her past the Golden Nugget, where Thomas McBride was already back behind the bar, a bandage wrapped around his head like a badge of honor. The saloon hummed with excited chatter about the afternoon's events, though conversations died when she passed the windows. Inside, Lucy Peterson sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around an untouched cup of tea, her eyes distant. Word of Sarah's display had spread beyond the town limits. 3 riders had already galloped north, presumably to inform Coyote Jack. The desert wind carried whispers of approaching storms, both natural and man-made. Sarah counted 4 strangers in town since sundown, all wearing guns and asking questions about the new deputy. Madame Chen waited outside her tea house, jade, pendant, glinting in the lamplight. "Miss Sarah," she called softly. "Perhaps time for evening tea?" Her tone suggested more than a simple invitation. The tea house's interior was warm, fragrant with exotic spices that Madame Chen imported from mysterious sources. The old woman closed the shutters with deliberate care before settling across from Sarah at a small table. A single oil lamp cast dancing shadows on the painted silk screens. "In my homeland," Madame Chen began, pouring tea with practiced grace, "there are stories of warriors who become legends, who fade into myth like morning mist before the sun." Her dark eyes studied Sarah over the rim of her cup. "But sometimes myths return, when heaven and earth demand balance be restored." Sarah sipped her tea, appreciating its subtle complexity. "You seem to know a great deal about myths, Madame Chen. I know about Ghost Hand Hannah." The words fell like stones in still water. "About Mason County, about the ledger that disappeared." She set her cup down with precise movements. "And I know about William Crawford's true plans for this territory." Sarah's hand didn't move toward her gun, but something shifted in her posture. "Dangerous knowledge. Knowledge is only dangerous to those who fear truth." Madame Chen's voice carried an edge of steel beneath its silk. "Crawford's father was not the only one keeping records. My late husband, he was good with numbers, with secrets." She reached beneath the counter and withdrew a small red book. "Many powerful men visited his gambling house in Mason County, many loose tongues after too much wine." Sarah stared at the book, her face unreadable. "Why show me this?" "Because Crawford's son believes you have his father's ledger. But there were 2 books, one for show, one for truth." She pushed the red book across the table. "This one tells the real story. About the bribes, the murders, the plans for an empire built on blood and corruption. Plans his son now seeks to complete." Outside, horses thundered past, more riders heading north. Sarah's fingers traced the book's worn cover. "You've been waiting for me." "For Ghost Hand? Hannah?" "No." Madame Chen's smile held secrets. "For someone who could finish what was started at Mason County, someone who could bring balance." She poured more tea, the amber liquid catching the lamplight like liquid gold. "Crawford's son has gathered an army, but armies are built on fear, on greed, on promises of power." "And what am I built on?" Sarah's voice carried echoes of old wounds. "On justice," Madame Chen replied simply. "On the kind of truth that powerful men fear more than any gun." She hesitated, then added, "Rachel Thorne was asking about you in Silver Springs last week, about a woman who teaches piano to children in Mesa Verde." Sarah's cup paused halfway to her lips. "Ellen." "Your sister is safe for now. My connections watch over her, but Crawford's reach grows longer each day. And Coyote Jack's men, they are not known for gentleness." Sarah set her cup down with careful precision. "You're saying I can't run anymore. I'm saying the storm is coming whether you run or stand, Madam Chen's voice softened. "But this time you don't stand alone." The tea house's silence stretched like a drawn bowstring. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice carrying the weight of decisions made. "Tell me everything you know about Crawford's plans, and about Rachel Thorne." As Madam Chen began to speak, more riders thundered past outside. The night was young, and somewhere in the darkness old ghosts were stirring, ready to dance once more to the music of gunfire and vengeance. "Rachel Thorne wasn't born evil," Madam Chen continued, refilling their cups. "She became what? What the territory made her. Like many of us." Steam curled from the porcelain like ghosts of memories. Her father was a rancher in Mason County. Died in the first wave of violence along with her mother. Buck raised her after that, taught her to shoot, to survive, to hate. Sarah absorbed this information silently. The red book lay between them like a loaded gun. And now she rides with Coyote Jack. More than that, she leads his most brutal raids. They say she marks each kill with a red rose. Madame Chen's expression darkened. But it's not just about the killing. She's been gathering information, building alliances. The raiders have contacts now in every major town from here to the state line. A knock at the tea house's back door interrupted them. 3 sharp raps, followed by 2 soft ones, a prearranged signal. Madame Chen nodded to Sarah, who moved smoothly to cover the door, gun appearing in her hand like a magician's trick. Tommy Hayes, the young stable boy who often helped Sheriff Reed, slipped inside. His face was flushed with urgency. "Miss Sarah, riders coming in from the north, lots of them. And—" He hesitated, glancing at Madam Chen. "Speak freely, young one," the old woman said. "These walls keep secrets better than most graves. Rachel Thorne's with them, wearing a red dress and carrying matched Colts. She's asking for you by name, Miss Sarah. Says—" He swallowed hard. "Says Ghost Hand Hannah owes her a debt of blood." Sarah's expression didn't change, but something deadly flickered in her eyes. How many riders? 15, maybe 20. More gathering outside town. They're setting up camp at Miller's Creek. Tommy's voice dropped to a whisper. "And there's a fancy Eastern man with them, wearing a black suit, riding a white horse. Keeps giving orders to Coyote Jack himself." "William Crawford," Madam Chen said softly. "He moves faster than expected." Sarah moved to the window, carefully parting the shutters. The street was empty, but tension hung in the air like the metallic taste before a thunderstorm. "Tommy, find Sheriff Reed. Tell him what you've seen. Then get your family and anyone else you trust to the old mission church. Things are about to get complicated." As Tommy slipped away, Madam Chen spoke again. "Crawford will not stop with Rattlesnake Junction. This is just the beginning. With the ledgers, both ledgers, he could control every judge, every marshal, every powerful man from here to the capital." Sarah's hand rested on her gun, the weight familiar as a lover's touch. "Then we make sure he never gets them." She turned from the window and Madam Chen caught a glimpse of what others had seen at Mason County. Something ancient and lethal, wearing a woman's shape. Time to remind them why they called me Ghost Hand Hannah. Rachel Thorne sat astride her black mare at the edge of Miller's Creek, a red rose tucked into her dark hair. The moon cast enough light to illuminate the growing camp around her, tents rising like mushrooms after rain, cookfires dotting the darkness like fallen stars. 20 men now, with more arriving hourly. Each one a killer, drawn by the promise of blood and gold. William Crawford stood beside his white stallion, his Eastern suit incongruous against the rugged backdrop. His father's features lived in his face, but harder, colder, stripped of any pretense of justice. "The town must be taken intact," he was saying, his cultured voice carrying across the camp. "The ledger is paramount. Everything else is negotiable." "And Ghost Hand Hannah?" Rachel's fingers caressed her matched Colts, their pearl handles gleaming. "Is she negotiable too?" Crawford's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your personal vendetta is your own affair, Miss Thorne. Just ensure it doesn't interfere with our larger purpose." He gestured toward Rattlesnake Junction's distant lights. "That woman took everything from my father, his reputation, his power, his life. The ledger was just the beginning." Coyote Jack, sprawled by the main fire, spat into the flames. "Ain't natural way she moves. Saw her once, years back, like trying to shoot smoke." His scarred face twisted. "Lost 3 good men that day." "She's human." Rachel's voice carried the edge of an old blade. "She bleeds, I've seen it." Her hand unconsciously touched a scar on her shoulder, a souvenir from Mason County. "Tonight, we'll see it again." Back in town, Sarah stood in Sheriff Reed's office, studying a crude map of Rattlesnake Junction spread across his desk. Thomas McBride had joined them, along with Lucy Peterson and Doc Wilson. Outside, Tommy Hayes organized volunteers to move women and children to the relative safety of the mission church. 23 raiders confirmed, Reed reported, marking positions with lead shot. Plus Crawford and his personal guards, maybe 30 total. He looked up at Sarah. "Most folks have chosen sides. Those who haven't are either leaving or locking their doors." "Town's divided," McBride added, his bandaged head making him look fiercer rather than wounded. "Some say we should give Crawford what he wants. Others—" He gestured to the rifle he'd brought. "Others remember what happened last time men like him had power here." Sarah traced routes through the town with her finger. "They'll hit at dawn. Crawford's type loves symbolism. Rachel will lead the first wave. She'll want to prove herself." Her voice carried the weight of experience. "They'll expect us to concentrate our defense here, at the jail and sheriff's office." "But we won't," Lucy Peterson said quietly. The school teacher's earlier fear had been replaced by a steel that surprised everyone. "Because that's not where the ledger is it?" Sarah's eyes met hers. "Number, it's not." Doc Wilson cleared his throat. "Madame Chen's had visitors all evening. Folks we don't usually see in town. Chinese merchants, travelers, even a few Indians." His meaning was clear. The old woman's network was mobilizing. "Good." Sarah moved to the window, watching moonlight paint the street silver. "Crawford thinks this is about power, about control. He doesn't understand. It was never about the ledger. It was about justice, about balance." "And Rachel Thorne?" Reed asked softly. "What's she about?" Sarah's hand brushed her shawl, an unconscious gesture that spoke volumes. "Ghosts. The same ones that haunt us all out here." She turned back to the group. "But tonight isn't about ghosts. It's about choices. About standing against the darkness when standing's all that's left." McBride hefted his rifle. "Well, I ain't much for speeches, but I reckon any woman who can shoot like you's worth standing with." One by one, the others nodded. Even Lucy Peterson, who had never fired a gun before today, stood straighter. Sarah looked at them. A wounded saloon keeper, a school teacher, a doctor, and a sheriff past his prime. Not the army she would have chosen, but perhaps the one she needed. "Get some rest," she said finally. "Tomorrow comes early and it comes bloody." As the others filed out, Reed held her back. "You know Crawford won't stop with just the ledger. He'll want to know everything. About Mason County, about his father's death, about what really happened that day. Let him ask." Sarah's voice was soft, but carried the promise of violence. "Some answers come in the lead." Outside, the wind carried the scent of sage and gun smoke. Sarah moved through the darkened streets, checking positions, reinforcing resolve. Madame Chen's visitors had brought more than just information. Rifles appeared in unexpected hands, ammunition was distributed quietly, and barricades rose in strategic locations. At the mission church, families huddled together while Tommy Hayes organized the older boys into messenger runners. Sarah watched him work, seeing the shadow of the man he might become. "Your father would be proud," she told him softly, remembering another young man who'd died in Mason County. "Miss Sarah." Tommy hesitated, then pressed forward. "The stories they tell about Ghost Hand Hannah. About what happened that day? Were you really trained by Wild Bill himself?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Some stories are better left as stories, Tommy. She adjusted his gun belt with practiced hands. Just remember, aim true, and remember what you're fighting for. Back at Miller's Creek, Rachel Thorne paced like a caged mountain lion. The camp had grown to nearly 40 men now, their campfires dotting the landscape like fallen constellations. William Crawford sat beneath a canvas awning, studying maps spread across a portable desk. "She'll have prepared the town," Rachel said, her voice carrying the edge of obsession. "She always prepares, always plans." "Good." Crawford's smile was cold as mountain frost. "Let her plan. While she fortifies the obvious positions, our men will come in through the mine tunnels. Old surveyor maps show they run right under the town. By the time she realizes her mistake, it will be too late." Rachel's hand touched her shoulder scar again. "You don't know her like I do. In Mason County." "At Mason County," Crawford cut her off, "she was alone. Now she faces an army. Even ghosts can be killed, Miss Thorne. If you know where to shoot." In town, Sarah stood atop the Golden Nuggets roof, watching the eastern sky lighten almost imperceptibly. Dawn was still hours away, but she could feel it coming. In the wind, in the silence, in the weight of destiny settling around her shoulders like a familiar shawl. The ledger was safe, hidden where Crawford would never think to look. But tonight wasn't about ledgers or secrets or even justice. It was about standing against the tide of darkness that men like Crawford brought with them, about drawing a line in the blood-soaked sand of the frontier and saying no more. And if Rachel Thorne wanted her ghosts, well, ghost hand. Hannah knew all about ghosts. Some you fought, some you embraced, and some you became. The wind whispered through Rattlesnake Junction like a prophet's warning, carrying the weight of coming violence. Tomorrow would bring blood and smoke and the settling of old scores. But for now, Sarah watched and waited, her hand resting on her Colt, while somewhere in the darkness destiny loaded its guns. The first hint of trouble came not from the direction Sarah expected. Young Tommy Hayes burst into the sheriff's office just before midnight, his face pale in the lamplight. "Miss Sarah, movement in the old Sullivan mine. Men with lanterns, lots of them." Sarah's mind raced through implications. The mine tunnels, of course. They ran beneath half the town, abandoned veins of silver that had drawn the first settlers here. She'd studied the old maps in Reed's office but hadn't considered. Crawford's cleverer than I gave him credit for. Reed cursed softly, reaching for his rifle. Those tunnels could bring them up anywhere in town. General store, bank, even the church. He spread a yellowed mine map across his desk, its corners curling with age. The main shaft comes up behind the livery stable. Secondary shafts here, here, and here. His finger jabbed at various points. "We'll need to collapse them," Sarah said quietly. "All of them." "With what?" "Dynamite's locked in the mining company office and—" Reed stopped as Sarah withdrew several stick-shaped bundles from beneath her shawl. "Where did you—" Madam Chen's connections proved useful. Sarah's lips curved slightly. Amazing what can be traded for good tea these days. They worked quickly, moving through the sleeping town, like shadows. Sarah positioned volunteers at key points while others evacuated buildings near the tunnel exits. The dynamite had to be placed precisely. Too shallow, and the tunnels would remain passable. Too deep, and they risked destabilizing the entire street. At the livery stable, Sarah found Lucy Peterson waiting, a Winchester clutched in trembling hands. "I've been practicing," the schoolteacher said before Sarah could speak. "All evening. I can hit a tin can at 20 paces now. Hoping it won't come to that." Sarah showed her how to position herself behind a stack of hay bales. "If it does, aim for the chest, not the head. Bigger target." In the distance, a coyote howled, except it wasn't a coyote. Sarah recognized Rachel Thorne's signal from Mason County. The woman had always had a flair for dramatics. "They're ready," Lucy whispered. "In the tunnels. I can feel it." Sarah nodded. "So are we." She touched the detonator in her pocket. "When the shooting starts, stay low. These men. They're not like the raiders you saw before, they're professionals. Doc Wilson appeared from the shadows, his medical bag in one hand, a shotgun in the other. Got the church basement set up as a field hospital. Madam Chen's lending her girls as nurses. At Sarah's raised eyebrow, he shrugged. They've seen their share of bullet wounds. More signals echoed across the night, coyotes calling to each other, carrying messages only killers would understand. Sarah counted them, building a picture of Crawford's forces. They were being surrounded, slowly but surely, like a noose tightening around the town's throat. "Miss Sarah." Tommy's voice came from above. He'd taken position in the stable's hayloft. "Riders coming in from the east. But they're not raiders." Sarah climbed up to look. Through her spyglass, she could make out perhaps a dozen mounted figures approaching silently, their horses' hooves wrapped in cloth to muffle sound. They wore no bandanas, carried no visible weapons, but Sarah recognized the way they moved. Professionals indeed. "Crawford's personal guards," she said softly. "Ex-Army scouts. Probably. Men who kill for money instead of passion." She'd seen their kind before, at Mason County and elsewhere. More dangerous than the raiders in some ways. They'll have a plan. The night grew deeper, stars wheeling overhead like silent witnesses to what was coming. Sarah could feel the tension building, see it in the way Lucy's hands tightened on her rifle, in how Doc Wilson kept checking his medical supplies. A flash of movement caught her eye, a signal mirror catching starlight from the direction of Miller's Creek. Rachel was getting impatient, eager to start the dance of death she'd been rehearsing since Mason County. "It's not about the ledger anymore, is it?" Lucy asked suddenly. "Not really." Sarah checked her Colt one final time, an unconscious ritual as familiar as breathing. It never was. Crawford just doesn't know it yet. In the distance, another coyote called, but this time Sarah smiled, because it wasn't Rachel's signal. It was Madam Chen's people, positioned in the hills around town. Crawford's army might be larger, but Sarah had learned long ago that numbers weren't everything. Sometimes what mattered most was knowing when to be the ghost and when to be the gun. "Remember," Sarah instructed her small band of defenders, "if you hear the tunnels being used, give the signal. 3 short whistles." She demonstrated the sound, sharp, and clear enough to carry, but not so loud as to give away positions. "The dynamite needs to be timed perfectly. Too early, and they'll find another way in. Too late." She didn't need to finish the thought. They all understood the stakes. Through her spyglass, Sarah watched Crawford's guards taking positions in the hills. Their movements were precise, professional. These weren't common bandits, but trained killers. They'd choose their shots carefully, try to pick off the town's defenders one by one. "One more thing," she added, gathering her volunteers close. "Crawford's men will be wearing dark clothes, trying to blend with the night. Raiders wear red bandanas. Anyone you see wearing neither, shoot first, ask questions later." Lucy Peterson shivered, despite the warm night. "How can you be so calm?" "Knowing what's coming." Sarah's response was interrupted by a sound from below. Boots on wooden planks, trying to be quiet but not quite managing it. Someone was in the stable. Sarah motioned for silence, drawing her Colt with fluid grace. A shadow moved between the stalls. Sarah tracked it, waiting. The figure reached the ladder to the hayloft, started to climb. "That's far enough." Sarah's voice cut through the darkness like a knife. "Hands where I can see them. Is that any way to greet an old friend, Ghost Hand?" The voice was female, cultured with an edge of mockery. "Especially one bearing gifts?" Sarah's gun didn't waver. "Show yourself, Rachel." Rachel Thorne stepped into a shaft of moonlight, her red dress seeming to glow with an inner fire. She held no visible weapons, but Sarah knew better than to trust appearances. "You're still quick," Rachel said softly. "Still deadly. But are you quick enough to save everyone?" "What do you mean?" Rachel's smile was cold as a snake's. Crawford's men aren't just in the tunnels, Hannah. They're everywhere. In the shops, the houses, even the church. She looked at Lucy, then back to Sarah. How many innocents will die tonight because you won't give up one little book? You were innocent once, Sarah replied quietly. Before Mason County. Before your father died. Something flickered in Rachel's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or memory. We all were. Then men like Crawford's father taught us better? She took a step forward, ignoring Sarah's gun. Join us. Crawford's building something bigger than all of us. A new order for the territory. No more corrupt marshals, no more rich men's justice. Just Crawford's justice? Sarah's voice carried decades of bitter experience. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Nothing changes except the names on the graves. Rachel's unexpected appearance in the stable changed everything. Sarah kept her gun trained steady while her mind raced through implications. If Rachel could slip through their defenses so easily, how many others had already infiltrated the town? He's got men inside the church, Rachel continued, her voice carrying the edge of someone enjoying delivering bad news. Right now, watching all those brave townspeople you thought you'd protected. One signal from Crawford, and… She let the threat hang in the air. Sarah's finger tightened imperceptibly on the trigger. Why tell me this? Because I want you to understand, when the bleeding starts, when children die tonight, it won't be Crawford's fault. It'll be yours. Rachel moved closer, moonlight catching the red rose in her hair. The ledger, Hannah, that's all he wants. Give it to him, and everyone lives. Like my sister would live. Sarah's voice carried deadly calm. The one Crawford's men have been watching in Mesa Verde. Something flickered across Rachel's face. Surprise, perhaps. How did you… Madam Chen has better connections than you think. Sarah's aim didn't waver. Tell Crawford his father tried threatening my family once. Ask him how that worked out. Lucy Peterson's hands tightened on her rifle, but Rachel ignored her, focused entirely on Sarah. Mason County was different. You were younger then. Faster. Hadn't developed a conscience. Her smile turned cruel. Hadn't started caring about school teachers and stable boys and old Chinese women. Outside, more coyote calls echoed. Real ones this time, their howls carrying an edge of nervousness. Animals could sense the coming violence. Sarah counted heartbeats, weighing options. If Rachel was here, it meant the main attack wasn't far behind. You're right about one thing, Sarah said finally. I have changed. I learned that some things matter more than survival. Her free hand moved to her shawl. Like justice. Like the truth. Rachel's laugh was bitter as desert wind. Truth? There's no truth out here, Hannah. Just power. Men like Crawford understand that. Why do you think his father kept that ledger? Insurance against other powerful men. Protection. Fat lot of good it did him, Lucy muttered, earning a venomous glare from Rachel. The ledger destroyed him, Rachel snapped. When it disappeared, everyone assumed he'd lost control. His enemies moved in, stripped him of everything. And his own son. She stopped, realizing she'd said too much. Sarah's eyes narrowed. His own son, what, Rachel? But Rachel was already moving, her hands blurring toward hidden weapons. Sarah fired first, her shot deafening in the confined space. Rachel spun, blood blooming on her shoulder, but managed to dive behind a stack of hay bales. Now! Rachel's shout triggered chaos. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, Crawford's infiltrators revealing themselves. Sarah grabbed Lucy, pulling her down as bullets splintered the wood around them. Tommy! The signal exclamation mark Sarah's voice carried over the gunfire. The stable boy's whistle pierced the night. 3 sharp blasts. Sarah slapped the detonator in her pocket. The explosion rocked the town. Underground, the mine tunnels collapsed, taking several of Crawford's men with them. But Rachel was already gone. leaving only a red rose and a spreading bloodstain on the stable floor. She planned this, Lucy gasped, hands shaking on her rifle. Let herself get shot to trigger the attack early. Sarah checked her gun, reloading smoothly. She came to talk. To understand. Another explosion rocked the night, Madame Chen's people taking out one of Crawford's sniper positions. But some ghosts can't be talked away. Through the stable's broken window, Sarah could see fires starting in town. Crawford's men had emerged from their hiding places, engaging in gun battles with townspeople and Sarah's volunteers. The night was about to become very long and very bloody. What about the church? Lucy's voice trembled. If Rachel was telling the truth. She was. Sarah's expression hardened. Which means we know exactly where some of Crawford's men are. She checked her spare ammunition. Time to remind them why they called me Ghost Hand Hannah. The night air filled with gun smoke and screams as Rattlesnake Junction erupted into war. But Sarah moved with deadly purpose, her path clear. Sometimes, to save a town, you had to become the very thing they feared. A ghost with a loaded gun. Across town, Sheriff Reed faced his own battles. Crawford's men had emerged from their hiding places like snakes from winter dens, turning the peaceful streets into killing grounds. But Reed had been a lawman too long to panic. He organized his defenders methodically, turning the jail into a fortress. They're pushing toward the church, Deputy Wilson reported, ducking as bullets shattered the office windows. Got at least 10 men moving that way. Sarah knew, Reed muttered, firing carefully at a shadow that moved too fast. Knew they'd try to use the townspeople as leverage? His shot found its mark, and someone screamed in the darkness. At the mission church, Doc Wilson had turned the basement into an impromptu hospital. The wounded were already coming in. Defenders caught in the initial assault, civilians who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Madame Chen's girls worked efficiently, their usual fine dresses replaced by practical clothing stained with blood. 3 of Crawford's men, one of the girls reported to Doc Wilson, disguised as travelers. They're upstairs with the townspeople. The doctor's hand tightened on his shotgun. Can you get the word to Sarah? No need. The voice came from the shadows, making them all jump. Sarah materialized like her namesake ghost, moving with deadly purpose. Lucy, tend to the wounded. Doc, get ready for more. The men upstairs, the doctor began. Won't be a problem much longer. Sarah checked her Colt one final time. When you hear the shots, get everyone to the basement. Madame Chen's people will cover the doors. She moved up the stairs like smoke, each step silent as prayer. Through the church's broken windows, she could see fires burning across town. Crawford's men were methodical. She'd give them that. Each blaze is strategically placed to draw defenders away from key positions. In the church's main room, 3 men stood among the huddled townspeople. They were good. Their positions covered all angles. Their weapons held with professional competence. But they'd never faced someone like her. Evening, gentlemen. Sarah's voice carried through the tense air. I believe you're in my town. What followed happened so quickly that witnesses later disagreed on the sequence. Sarah seemed to flow between the men like water, her gun appearing and disappearing like magic. 3 shots rang out, so close together they sounded like one. 3 men fell, their weapons unfired. Get to the basement, Sarah ordered the stunned townspeople. Stay there until I send word. She turned to Tommy Hayes, who looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. Watch the door, no one enters without the password. What's the password? Tommy asked. Sarah smiled grimly. Ghost hand. Outside, the battle for Rattlesnake Junction continued to rage. But something had changed. Word spread through Crawford's men like a chill wind. Ghost hand. Hannah wasn't just a legend. She was dead in a black shawl, moving through the night like judgment made flesh. And the night was still young. Crawford stood at the edge of Miller's Creek watching Rattlesnake Junction burn. The explosions had taken him by surprise. Ghost Hand Hannah was proving craftier than expected. Behind him, Rachel Thorne approached, her shoulder crudely bandaged. She knows about your sister, Rachel reported, her voice tight with pain. About Mesa Verde, and and she hesitated. She knows something about your father, something that made her confident. Crawford's face hardened in the firelight. The ledger isn't what matters anymore. She has to die. Tonight. He turned to his lieutenant, a scarred man in an Army Scout's jacket. Send in the specialists. I want that church taken. In town, Sarah moved between shadows, counting ammunition. 6 shots left in her Colt, 3 in the backup piece. Not enough. Not for what was coming. She could sense them now, different from the other killers. These moved like she did, quiet as death on a winter morning. Specialists, she muttered. Should have known. Madame Chen appeared beside her, silent as smoke. 4 of them, ex-army like you. They carry the same shadows in their eyes. Sarah nodded. Ghost soldiers. Men trained in the same dark arts she'd learned, shaped into living weapons. The church will be their target. Crawford's trying to force my hand. Then perhaps it is time to show him your other hand. Madame Chen produced a small package wrapped in red silk. My connections brought this. From your cache in Mesa Verde. Sarah unwrapped it carefully. Inside lay a second Colt, identical to her first. Her ghost guns, they'd called them in the war. Matched weapons, perfectly balanced, deadly as sin in the right hands. Your sister sends her regards, Madame Chen added softly. Says she's safe, hidden where Crawford's men won't find her. A weight lifted from Sarah's shoulders. One less vulnerability to worry about. She loaded the second Colt with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from 100 battles taking over. They're coming, Tommy Hayes whispered from his lookout position. Moving like shadows, never seen anything like it. Sarah had. At Mason County, there had been others like her. Government men, trained in the arts of death. Most died that day, but some had escaped. And now Crawford had found them, bought their loyalty with gold and promises. Get everyone deeper into the basement, she ordered. Bar the doors. No matter what you hear, don't open them. Lucy Peterson stepped forward, her school teacher's demeanor replaced by something harder. Let me help. I can shoot now. You showed me how. This isn't about shooting, Sarah replied quietly. What's coming? It's something else. Something from before. She checked her guns one final time. Sometimes to fight shadows, you have to become one. Outside, the specialists were closing in. Sarah could feel them, 4 deadly presences moving through the night like hunting wolves. They'd take different approaches, try to trap her between them, standard ghost soldier tactics. But they'd forgotten something important. Something Crawford should have remembered from Mason County. Sometimes, the ghost you hunt is hunting you. Sarah moved into position, her black shawl making her one with the shadows. The matched Colts felt alive in her hands, eager for what was coming. Behind her, the church stood silent, filled with people depending on her to keep death at bay. Miss Sarah, Tommy called softly. Why'd they really call you Ghost Hand Hannah? Was it just because you're fast with a gun? Sarah's smile was cold as moonlight on a tomb. No, Tommy. It's because when I want to be... She seemed to fade into darkness, her voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. They never see my hand before they die. The night held its breath, waiting for the dance of ghosts to begin. The first specialist revealed himself at the church's east corner, a shadow darker than the rest. Sarah recognized his movement pattern. Military precision. Every step calculated. His gun would be a custom piece, modified for silent killing. She waited, letting him get closer. These men were different from common killers. They'd expect the obvious moves, the standard counters. So she'd give them something else entirely. The second specialist appeared near the bell tower, moving up the old wooden scaffolding like a spider. The third and fourth were splitting up, trying to flank her position. Classic ghost soldier strategy. Divide the target's attention, create multiple threats. Sarah touched the jade pendant Madame Chen had given her. Not for luck. Ghost soldiers didn't believe in luck, but as a reminder of why she fought, of what happened when good people stood aside and let darkness win. The first specialist was 10 feet away now, his breathing controlled, his gun ready. Sarah could read his intentions in his stance. He'd try for a quick, clean kill. One shot, no sound, no witnesses. He died never knowing what hit him. Sarah's first bullet caught him under the ear. Her second took out the man on the scaffolding before he could level his weapon. The shots echoed like thunder in the quiet night. The remaining 2 specialists reacted instantly, but Sarah was already moving. She flowed between shadows like water between stones, the matched colts singing their deadly song. A flash of gunfire from the left, the third man revealing his position. Sarah's return shot found its mark. Ghost hand, the last specialist called out, his voice carrying the same hard edge as hers. They said you died in Mason County. Many things died in Mason County. Sarah kept moving, using the church's architecture to mask her position. Honor, justice, good men following bad orders. Crawford's paying gold for your head. The man's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a trick she knew well. More than just gold. He's offering pardons, clean slates. No such thing as clean slates out here. Sarah tracked his movement by sound, by instinct, by the whisper of cloth against stone. Just blood and lies and men like Crawford trying to buy what can't be bought. Then why fight? Why not just give him what he wants? Sarah's laugh was soft as cemetery grass. Because some things matter more than survival. Some lines can't be uncrossed. She sensed him now, closer than he thought. You were there, weren't you? Mason County. I remember your voice. A pause. South Ridge. By the old mission. You let me live that day. Yes. Sarah's guns found their mark in the darkness. I won't make the same mistake twice. The shots echoed once, then silence fell again. 4 bodies cooling in the night air. 4 more ghosts to haunt the territory's dreams. Sarah reloaded methodically, her movements precise as a ritual. Inside the church, Tommy Hayes waited with the others. When Sarah returned, something in her eyes made him step back. He'd seen a legend come to life tonight, watched ghost stories become flesh and blood. But mostly he'd seen what happened when darkness came to call, and found a darker shadow waiting. News of the specialists' deaths spread through Crawford's forces like poison. These had been his elite killers, men feared throughout the territory. Now they lay cooling in the churchyard, each killed with the same deadly precision that had made Ghost Hand Hannah a legend. Crawford paced near the creek, his elegant suit stained with dust. She's trying to draw us out, he muttered. Make us waste resources, expose our positions. Rachel Thorne watched him with fever-bright eyes, her wounded shoulder making her restless. Send me in. I know how she thinks, how she moves. Like you knew in Mason County? Crawford's voice carried an edge. When she killed 30 men and disappeared with my father's ledger? That was different. She was different then. Rachel's hand strayed to her old scar. She's developed attachments, weaknesses. The schoolteacher, the stable boy, that Chinese woman. Crawford stopped pacing. Yes, her little network of spies and helpers. Madame Chen's connections have been particularly troublesome. He turned to Coyote Jack, who had been watching silently. Take your best men. Burn the tea house. Kill everyone inside. In town, Sarah conferenced with Sheriff Reed in the relative safety of the church basement. The initial attack had been repelled, but at a cost. 3 defenders died, several wounded. Doc Wilson worked tirelessly, aided by Madame Chen's girls. Crawford's getting desperate, Reed observed, cleaning his rifle. Losing those specialists hit him hard. He'll try something dramatic now. Sarah nodded. He'll target what he thinks are my weaknesses. Try to draw me out. Her eyes narrowed. The tea house, Madame Chen. As if summoned by her words, Tommy Hayes burst in. Raiders heading for the tea house, at least 15 of them led by Coyote Jack himself. Sarah checked her guns, the matched Colts gleaming in the lamplight. They think they're hunting us, she said softly. Time to show them what real hunting looks like. But Lucy Peterson grabbed her arm. Wait. There's something you need to know. Something Madam Chen told me to tell you if things got bad. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. The Red Book. It's not just a copy of Crawford's ledger. It's proof that William Crawford killed his own father. Sarah went very still. What? That's why he really wants it. The old judge didn't die in a riding accident. His son arranged it, after learning his father was planning to turn state's evidence. The ledger was just an excuse. The pieces fell into place in Sarah's mind. Crawford's obsession, his desperate need to find both books, his willingness to burn down an entire town. He wasn't just protecting his power, he was covering up patricide. Does Rachel know? Sarah asked quietly. Lucy shook her head. Madam Chen doesn't think so. She thinks Rachel really believes she's fighting for justice, for some new order in the territory. Sarah's laugh was bitter as trail coffee. There's no new order coming, just new masters wearing old masks. She checked her ammunition one final time. Where's the Red Book now? Safe, Lucy assured her. Hidden where even Crawford's men won't think to look. Outside, gunfire erupted from the direction of the tea house. Sarah moved toward the door, but Reed stopped her. You know it's a trap, he said quietly. Of course it is. Sarah's smile was cold as mountain frost. But sometimes, the best way to spring a trap is to step right into it. Just make sure you're the one holding the key. She slipped into the night like a ghost returning to its grave, leaving Reed and the others to wonder if they'd just seen her for the last time. But Sarah's mind was already shifting, changing, becoming what she'd been at Mason County. Sometimes, to save what you love, you have to become what you fear. The tea house glowed in the darkness, its paper lanterns casting warm light that belied the violence to come. Sarah moved through the shadows, counting heartbeats. Coyote Jack's men had surrounded the building, their torches ready to set it ablaze. Through the windows, she could see Madame Chen calmly pouring tea, seemingly oblivious to the danger. But Sarah knew better. The old woman's connections wouldn't have left her unprotected. Burn it! Coyote Jack's voice carried across the quiet street. Burn it all! The first torch flew through a window, but something unexpected happened. Instead of catching fire, the paper screen seemed to absorb the flames. Then Sarah saw it. The barely visible sheen of water covering everything. Madame Chen had prepared well. Forget the fire, Jack roared. Go in and kill them all. That's when Sarah made her move. The matched Colts appeared in her hands like magic, their reports thunderous in the night air. 2 raiders fell before they knew what hit them. 3 more dropped as they turned to face this new threat, but Coyote Jack was no fool. It's a trap, he shouted. She's trying to draw us away from... His eyes widened in realization. The church! Crawford said she'd try to... His words cut off as arrows began raining from the surrounding rooftops. Madame Chen's real surprise revealed itself. A dozen shadow warriors, their bows singing death into the night. The raiders found themselves caught between Sarah's deadly accuracy and this new threat from above. Ghost Hand. Jack's voice carried equal parts fury and fear. You think you're clever? Crawford's already won. Even now, Rachel's leading men to... Sarah's bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. I know, she said quietly. That's exactly what I wanted. Because while Crawford's forces focused on the tea house, other plans were in motion. Sometimes the best way to win wasn't to avoid the trap, but to use it to set a bigger one. The night was about to become very interesting indeed. Rachel Thorne led a dozen men through Rattlesnake Junction's back alleys, moving with purpose. Her wounded shoulder throbbed with each step, but pain was an old friend by now. The church stood ahead, seemingly undefended after Sarah's departure. Remember, she whispered to her chosen killers, the school teacher and the boy are mine. Crawford wants the rest alive, for now. But as they approached the church, something felt wrong. The silence was too complete, the shadows too deep. Rachel's instincts, honed by years of survival, screamed danger. "It's too easy," one of her men muttered. "Ghost Hand wouldn't leave them unprotected." He was right, of course. As they reached the church steps, the trap revealed itself. Sheriff Reed's voice rang out from the bell tower. "Now!" Gunfire erupted from every window, every doorway. Not the random shots of frightened townspeople, but the coordinated volleys of trained shooters. Madam Chen's warriors had been waiting, their rifles speaking death into the night. Rachel dove for cover, cursing. Half her men were down in the first exchange, the others scrambling for protection that didn't exist. She'd walked right into it, exactly as Sarah had planned. "You think you know her better than anyone," another voice called out. Lucy Peterson, the schoolteacher. "But you never really knew her at all, did you, Rachel?" Rachel fired blindly toward the voice, her shots going wide. "I know her. I was there in Mason County. I saw what she really is." "Did you?" This voice was new. Madame Chen, calm as a mountain lake. "Or did you see only what you wanted to see? What did Crawford tell you to see?" More of Rachel's men fell, picked off by invisible shooters. She was alone now, trapped in a killing ground of her own making. But Rachel Thorne hadn't survived this long by giving up easily. She broke cover, running for the church doors. If she could get inside, take hostages. Her plans shattered as she found Sarah waiting in the doorway, those matched Colts aimed with deadly precision. "Hello, Rachel." Sarah's voice carried echoes of Mason County. "Time we had that talk you've been avoiding." Rachel raised her guns, but pain and blood loss made her slow. Sarah moved like liquid moonlight, disarming her with terrifying ease. Rachel found herself on her knees, looking up at the legend she'd chased for so long. "You don't understand," Rachel gasped. "Crawford's building something new, something better. No more corrupt lawmen, no more rich men's justice." "No," Sarah agreed softly. "Just Crawford's justice." "Tell me, Rachel, did you know he killed his own father?" Rachel's face went pale. "You're lying. The ledger proves it. The real ledger, the one Madam Chen's husband kept. Every detail, every witness, every piece of blood money Crawford paid to cover it up." "No." Rachel's world was unraveling. He told me his father was planning to expose corruption, that you killed him to protect the guilty." Sarah holstered one gun, reaching into her shawl. She withdrew a small red book. "Read it yourself. Your father's name is in here too. On the list of honest men Crawford's father had killed. Men who wouldn't play along with his schemes." Rachel's hands trembled as she took the book. As she read, tears began falling on the pages. Everything she'd believed, every justification for the blood on her hands, crumbled to dust. "Why show me this?" she whispered finally. "Because everyone deserves a chance to choose again." Sarah's voice was gentle now. "Even ghosts like us." In the distance, explosions lit up the night, Crawford's men engaging with more of Madame Chen's warriors. But here in this moment, two women who'd walked through hell faced a different kind of reckoning. "What Crawford's building," Sarah continued, "it's not justice. It's just another empire built on lies and blood, like his father's, like all the others." Rachel looked up, her eyes haunted. "And what are you building, Ghost Hand?" Sarah's smile was sad as desert rain. "Nothing. Some of us aren't meant to build. We're meant to tear down what needs tearing down, to stand against the darkness so others can build something better." Behind them, Deputy Wilson called down from his position. "More riders coming!" Looks like Crawford himself, leading at least 20 men. Sarah helped Rachel to her feet. "Time to choose, Rachel. Man who killed your father out there, thinking he owns your loyalty. What are you going to do about it?" Rachel stared at the red book in her hands, then at the gun Sarah had taken from her. Her face hardened with newfound purpose. "Give me back my weapons." Even knowing you might use them on me? You always could read people too well, Hannah. Rachel's smile was bitter but genuine. Right now, there's only one man I want to kill. Sarah returned Rachel's guns. Some choices you had to make on faith, even out here where faith was as rare as rain. Crawford will have the tea house surrounded by now, thinking he's trapped Madam Chen. But that's not where the real trap is it? Rachel checked her weapons with professional efficiency. You always were playing a deeper game. Sarah's matched Colts gleamed in the lamplight. Crawford's father taught me that. Always have one more move than they expect. One more card they don't know about. Outside, horses thundered closer. Crawford's voice carried on the wind, issuing orders. He thought he had them cornered, thought his superior numbers would finally overwhelm the legend of Ghost Hand Hannah. But legends, like ghosts, had a way of surprising you. Sarah and Rachel moved into position, two deadly shadows prepared for what was coming. Sometimes the most dangerous predators were the ones you thought you'd tamed. Crawford was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Crawford's attack came like a desert storm, sudden, violent, and overwhelming. His men hit the church from 3 directions, their gunfire shattering windows and splintering wood. But Sarah and Rachel were ready, their combined skill turning the church steps into a killing ground. "He'll try to burn us out," Rachel called over the gunfire, her shots picking off Crawford's men with lethal precision. "It's what he did in Silver Spring Sun." Sarah moved like smoke between firing positions, the matched Colts dealing death with surgical accuracy. That's what he expects us to fear. But fire's not his real plan. As if confirming her words, a new sound cut through the battle. Pickaxes on wood. Crawford's men were attacking the church's foundation while the gunfight distracted the defenders. The tunnels, Sarah realized. They're trying to collapse the building into the old mine shafts. Inside, Lucy Peterson organized the townspeople, moving them away from the weakening walls. Doc Wilson continued treating the wounded, his hands steady despite the chaos. Tommy Hayes ran messages between defensive positions showing courage beyond his years. Crawford's voice carried over the mayhem. "It's over, Ghost Hand. You've lost. Give me the ledger, and maybe some of these good people live to see the morning." Sarah caught Rachel's eye. Ready to show him how wrong he is? Rachel checked her ammunition, her face set with deadly purpose. Born ready. "But Hannah, there's something you should know about your sister in Mesa Verde." "She's safe," Sarah cut her off. "Madame Chen's people got her out days ago." "No." Rachel's voice carried genuine regret. "Crawford never had men watching her. It was a bluff. He didn't even know you had a sister until I told him, just now in the Creek camp. He's been playing you, making you think he has more reach than he does." Sarah absorbed this, her mind racing through implications. If Crawford had been bluffing about Ellen— "The mine maps," she said suddenly, "the ones showing tunnels under the town. Where did he get them?" Rachel's eyes widened in understanding. "From the mining company office, where you stored the dynamite." "Which means—" Sarah's smile was cold as mountain frost. "He's about to learn a very expensive lesson about trusting old maps." The picking sounds grew louder. Crawford's men had reached the church's main support beams, but Sarah made no move to stop them, even as dust began falling from the ceiling. "Sheriff!" she called Reed. "Get everyone into the center of the church, away from the walls." Reed didn't question her, just started moving people. He'd learned to trust Sarah's instincts. Outside, Crawford's voice grew more confident with each passing moment. "Your choice, Ghost Hand. The ledger, or these people's lives." Sarah stepped onto the church porch, seemingly exposed. Her black shawl billowed in the gun smoke like wings of judgment. "You want the ledger, William? The one that proves you murdered your father? Come and get it." Crawford's face, visible in the firelight, twisted with rage. "Kill her! Kill them all!" But Sarah just smiled. Because Crawford had forgotten something important about old mining towns, about how the real tunnels were never where the maps said they were. The ground began to shake. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, You won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.